Carl Jung, a titan of psychology and philosophy, left us with insights so profound that even today, they remain largely misunderstood or misapplied. Jung didn't just study the mind, he sought to uncover the hidden forces shaping who we are. While most people recognize his work on archetypes, the shadow, and the collective unconscious, there are truths embedded in his teachings that few truly grasp. Today, together, we will explore 3 of these secrets that, if understood and applied correctly, could transform how you see yourself, others, and the very fabric of reality. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are living, breathing tools for personal evolution. But before we begin, I want to ask you something. Who do you think you are? Not the surface level answer, the name on your ID or the roles you play in life, but who are you really? And how much of that is shaped by forces you've never questioned? Jung believed that much of what we call our personality isn't ours at all. It's borrowed, inherited, or imposed. So what would it mean to reclaim it? Let's begin. Jung's first secret revolves around what he called the self for Jung. The self isn't just who we are consciously, it is the totality of who we are, both the parts we know and the parts we know and the parts we don't. Here's the paradox: you are both the architect of your personality and its prisoner. From the moment we are born, we begin constructing a persona, a mask we wear to navigate the world. This mask is essential. It protects us, helps us fit in, and gives us a sense of identity. But the problem is that we confuse the mask with the face beneath it. Think about it. How many of your opinions, preferences, and behaviors are truly yours? How much of what you do is shaped by the expectations of others, your family, your culture, your peers? Jung warned that the persona, while necessary, can become a cage. The more tightly we cling to it, the more we lose touch with our deeper nature. And what happens when that deeper nature, the self, is ignored? It doesn't disappear. It waits in the shadows, manifesting as anxiety, depression, or a vague sense of emptiness.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Here's the first secret: your personality is not fixed. It is a fluid, evolving construct. But to change it, you must first confront the parts of yourself you've ignored. Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating all the fragmented parts of the psyche into a harmonious whole. This includes not only the traits you like about yourself, but also the ones you despise or fear. Let me ask you this: what part of yourself have you been running from? Is it your anger, your vulnerability, your ambition? Jung believed that whatever we repress doesn't just go away, it festers, and over time, it gains power. He once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So, how much of what you call destiny is actually just unexamined parts of yourself running the show? But here's the challenge: most of us don't want to face the truth about ourselves. It's uncomfortable. It's messy. It forces us to admit that we are not as in control as we like to think. Yet, this is where the greatest growth happens. The more you integrate your shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected, the freer you become. Imagine for a moment that your personality is like a house. Most people live in just 1 or 2 rooms, the ones they feel are acceptable or safe, but Jung invites us to explore the whole house, even the dark basement and the dusty attic. Because until we do, we are not truly whole. So here's a practical question: what would it look like to live more authentically? Not the version of you that tries to please others or meet societal standards, but the raw, unfiltered you. And what would it take to start peeling back the layers of the persona to discover that deeper self? The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to the moments when you feel disconnected from yourself. Is it when you're trying to fit in? or when you're suppressing your true feelings to avoid conflict. These moments are clues, breadcrumbs leading you back to the core of who you are. But awareness alone isn't enough. You must also have the courage to act on it. For example, if you realize that you've been hiding your true opinions because you fear judgment, what would it mean to start speaking your truth, even if it's uncomfortable? Or if you've been suppressing your creativity because it doesn't seem practical? What would it mean to start honoring that part of yourself, even in small ways? Jung's first secret is a call to action. Stop living as a fragment of yourself. Reclaim the parts of you that you've abandoned. Because the more whole you become, the more authentic your personality will be. And when you live authentically, you don't just change your inner world, you change how the world responds to you. Let me leave you with this thought. What if the anxiety, the dissatisfaction, the restlessness you feel isn't a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that something is missing? And what if that missing piece is the real you? Carl Jung's insights into the human mind remain unmatched in their depth and relevance. His work wasn't just about understanding the psyche, it was about confronting the truths we often avoid. Jung believed that much of what we call our personality isn't ours at all. It's a construct shaped by forces we rarely stop to question. In this script, we're going to examine 3 personality secrets Jung understood better than anyone. These secrets aren't abstract theories, they are tools you can use to break free from patterns that limit you, transform your relationships, and live in a way that feels real. But before we begin, let me ask something straightforward. How much of who you are is shaped by what you think others expect of you? How much of your personality is built to survive, to please, or to avoid conflict? Jung's work shows us that personality isn't a fixed thing, it's dynamic, layered, and often built on compromises we've made with life. What would it mean to stop compromising and start living from a deeper place? Let's begin. Jung's first secret is that what we call me is often just the surface. He used the term persona to describe the mask we wear in public, the version of ourselves we present to the world. This mask is necessary. It helps us navigate social situations, build relationships, and function in society. But here's the problem: most people confuse the mask with their true self. Over time, they start believing in the performance. Think about this for a moment. How much of your personality is shaped by what you think you should be? Maybe you learned early on that being quiet and agreeable kept you out of trouble, so you buried your assertiveness. Or perhaps you were praised for being the responsible one, so you pushed aside your more carefree, spontaneous side. These aren't small adjustments, they are the building blocks of how we define ourselves. And yet, they are often based on survival, not truth. Jung believed that the more tightly we cling to our persona, the more we lose touch with what he called the self. The self is the totality of who you are, not just the parts you like, but everything: your strengths, your flaws, your potential, your fears. It's the whole picture. And here's the hard truth: most of us are out of touch with it. We live in the persona, ignoring the deeper layers of our being. Over time, this creates a kind of inner split. The parts of ourselves we suppress don't disappear, they go underground. Jung called this the shadow. The shadow isn't inherently bad. It's just the parts of you that you've rejected because they didn't fit the image you wanted to project. Maybe you've buried your anger because it felt too dangerous. Maybe you've suppressed your creativity because it didn't seem practical. Or maybe you've ignored your vulnerability because you were taught that showing weakness is unacceptable. But the shadow doesn't stay quiet. It finds ways to surface through anxiety, anger, self-sabotage, or a sense of emptiness you can't quite explain. Here's what makes this so challenging: the shadow isn't obvious. It hides in the blind spots of your mind. You don't see it directly, you see its effects. Maybe you keep sabotaging your relationships and don't know why. Or you feel stuck in your career but can't pinpoint what's holding you back. These are clues that your shadow is at work. Jung's first secret is this: if you want to understand your personality, you have to confront what you've been avoiding. This isn't easy. It requires brutal honesty. It means asking questions that most people don't want to answer. For example, what behaviors do you criticize in others? Jung believed that what annoys us most in others is often a reflection of what we've suppressed in ourselves. If you can't stand arrogance, is it possible you've buried your own confidence out of fear of being seen as too much? If you resent people who are overly emotional, could it be that you've disconnected from your own feelings? The goal here isn't to judge yourself, it's to see yourself clearly. The more you integrate your shadow, the more whole you become. And the more whole you become, the freer you are to shape your personality in a way that feels right, not just acceptable. But how do you do this? Start small. Pay attention to the moments that trigger you when you feel angry, jealous, or defensive. Instead of dismissing these feelings, get curious about them. What are they trying to show you? Another way to uncover your shadow is to look at your dreams. Jung believed that dreams are a direct line to the unconscious, a place where the shadow often reveals itself. If you have recurring dreams, especially ones that feel emotionally charged, pay attention. They might be trying to tell you something about the parts of yourself you've ignored. Jung's first secret is a wake-up call: your personality isn't fixed. It's a dynamic interplay between your conscious choices and the unconscious forces shaping you behind the scenes. The more you bring these forces into the light, the more control you have over your life. But control isn't the goal. The goal is freedom, and freedom begins with self-awareness. So let me leave you with this: what part of yourself are you most afraid to face? And what would it mean to stop running from it? Jung's second secret lies in the staggering influence of the unconscious mind on your personality. Most people live as though their decisions, behaviors, and identities are entirely conscious choices. But Jung knew that this is an illusion. Beneath the surface of your awareness lies a vast ocean of thoughts, memories, instincts, and archetypes that influence your life far more than you realize. These unconscious forces don't ask for your permission, they operate silently, shaping your beliefs, desires, and actions without your knowledge. And here's the startling truth: until you recognize and engage with your unconscious, you're not truly free. You're being lived by forces you don't understand. Let's break this down. Every experience you've had, every relationship, every joy and trauma, it all leaves an imprint in your unconscious. But Jung believed the unconscious is not just a storage house for your personal memories. It's also the home of something much deeper: the collective unconscious. This is the part of your psyche that connects you to the shared experiences of humanity. It's where archetypes live, universal patterns and symbols that influence us all, whether we're aware of them or not. Think about this for a moment. Why do we resonate so deeply with certain stories? Why does the hero's journey, the struggle between good and evil, or the quest for love feel so universal? It's because these patterns are embedded in the collective unconscious. They aren't just stories, they're blueprints for how we understand life. And whether you realize it or not, these archetypes are shaping your personality. They influence the roles you play, the goals you pursue, and even the conflicts you face. Take the archetype of the hero, for example. This pattern is about overcoming adversity, striving for greatness, and proving your worth. If this archetype is active in your unconscious, you might feel a constant need to achieve. to push yourself, to conquer challenges. But what happens if this drive becomes unbalanced? You might burn out, feel disconnected from others, or lose sight of what truly matters. Or consider the archetype of the caregiver. If this pattern is dominant, you might find yourself putting others' needs before your own, often at the expense of your well-being. These archetypes aren't good or bad, they simply are. The question is whether you're aware of them or whether they're running your life without your input. Jung's second secret is this: the unconscious isn't something to fear or suppress. It's a source of immense power, creativity, and wisdom. But to access its gifts, you have to engage with it consciously. This is where most people get stuck. They either ignore the unconscious entirely, assuming it doesn't matter, or they let it take over, becoming victims of their own unexamined impulses. Jung's work offers a third path: integration. This means building a relationship with your unconscious so it becomes an ally, not an adversary. But how do you do this? Start by paying attention to the symbols and patterns in your life. Jung believed that the unconscious speaks to us through symbols, often in dreams or recurring themes. For example, if you keep dreaming about being lost, it might be a reflection of how you feel in your waking life. Or if you're drawn to certain images, a rising sun, a flowing river, a towering mountain, it could be your unconscious trying to communicate something about your inner state. Another way to engage with the unconscious is through active imagination. This is a technique Jung developed to dialogue directly with your inner world. Here's how it works: find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. Close your eyes and focus on an image, feeling, or thought that's been on your mind. Let it unfold without judgment or control. Maybe you imagine a figure appearing, a guide, a shadowy presence, or even a younger version of yourself. Ask it questions. Listen to what it says. This isn't about solving anything, it's about opening a channel to the unconscious and letting it speak. But here's the challenge: the unconscious doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. It might confront you with truths you've been avoiding. It might show you parts of yourself that make you uncomfortable. This is why so many people resist this work. They'd rather stay in the safety of their conscious mind, even if it means living a life that feels shallow or incomplete. But Jung believed that facing the unconscious is the only way to grow. The more you understand these hidden forces, the more you can work with them instead of against them. Let's take this a step further. Jung also believed that the unconscious isn't just personal, it's relational. In other words, the way you interact with others is deeply influenced by your unconscious mind. Have you ever noticed how certain people trigger intense reactions in you, even if they haven't done anything obvious? Maybe someone's confidence makes you feel small, or someone's vulnerability makes you feel uncomfortable. These reactions are often projections on conscious parts of yourself that you've disowned, mirrored back to you by others. Projection is one of the most powerful ways the unconscious shapes your relationships. For example, if you've suppressed your own ambition, you might envy or criticize ambitious people. If you've buried your need for love, you might idealize romantic partners, expecting them to fill a void that only you can address. Jung's second secret is this: the more you understand your unconscious, the less you'll project it onto others. And the less you project, the more authentic your relationships become. But this isn't easy. It requires humility and self-reflection. It means asking hard questions about why you react the way you do. For example, if you find yourself judging someone harshly, pause and ask, what does this reaction say about me? What part of myself am I seeing in them? This isn't about blaming yourself, it's about taking responsibility for your inner world. The more you do this, the more you'll see others for who they truly are, not as mirrors of your own unresolved issues. Jung's second secret is a call to action. Your unconscious is not your enemy, it's a reservoir of untapped potential. But to access its power, you have to confront what's hidden. This is not a one-time event, it's an ongoing process. Every time you engage with your unconscious, you learn something new about yourself. And every time you integrate a new insight, your personality becomes richer, deeper, and more whole. So here's something to think about: what symbols, patterns, or reactions keep showing up in your life? And what might they be trying to tell you? Jung's final secret about personality is the most profound. True personality is not about improving yourself or becoming someone different. It's about becoming whole. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection, and it certainly doesn't mean fitting into some predefined idea of what you should be. It's about embracing all the parts of yourself, the light and the dark, the strengths and the flaws, the conscious and the unconscious, and allowing them to exist together in harmony. Wholeness is the full acceptance of who you are, not just as an individual, but as a part of something greater. And this, Jung believed, is the ultimate goal of life. But let's be honest, most of us don't live this way. We live fragmented lives, divided between who we are and who we think we're supposed to be. This fragmentation creates tension, confusion, and a sense of being incomplete. Jung's third secret is this: wholeness is not something you achieve by adding to yourself. It's something you uncover by reclaiming the parts of yourself you've lost. Let's talk about how this works. Jung believed that most people are stuck in what he called the ego state. The ego is the part of your psyche that defines you as an individual. It's your sense of I, the part of you that says, "This is who I am." The ego is important. It's what allows you to navigate the world as a separate being. But the problem is that the ego often assumes it's the whole story. It tries to control everything, denying or suppressing anything that doesn't fit its narrative. For example, if your ego sees you as strong, it might suppress your vulnerability. If it sees you as rational, it might suppress your intuition. If it sees you as nice, it might suppress your anger. But these suppressed parts don't disappear, they go into the shadow, where they wait. Over time, the shadow grows stronger, and the tension between the ego and the shadow creates inner conflict. Jung taught that the key to resolving this conflict is to stop identifying with the ego alone. The ego is just one part of the psyche, it's not the whole. Beyond the ego is the self, the totality of who you are. The self is not limited by the ego's narrow definitions. It holds all your contradictions, all your potential, all your complexity. To live from the self is to live as a whole being, not a fragmented one. But this raises a difficult question: how do you shift from the ego to the self? How do you stop clinging to the narrow identity you've built and open yourself to the fullness of who you are? Jung believed this process requires two things: courage and surrender. Courage is needed because facing the self means facing everything you've avoided. It means confronting your shadow, your fears, your failures, and the parts of yourself you've rejected. But it also means confronting something even scarier: your own potential. Jung believed that most people are more afraid of their greatness than their flaws. Why? Because greatness comes with responsibility. To live fully means to stop hiding, to stop making excuses, and to step into the truth of who you are. Are you ready to do that?